A Vision of Youth by Victor James Daly. A horseman on a hilltop green drew rein and wound his horn. So bright he looked he might have been the herald of the morn. His steed was of the sovereign strain, in fancy's meadows bred, and pride was in his tossing mane, and triumph in his tread. The rider's eyes like jewels glowed, the world was in his hand, as down the woodland way he rode, when spring was in the land. From golden hour to golden hour, for him the woodland sang, and from the heart of every flower a singing fairy sprang. He rode along with rein so free, and as he rode the blue, mysterious bird of fantasy ever before him flew. He rode by cot and castle dim, through all the Greenland gay. Bright eyes through casements glanced at him, he laughed and rode away. The world with sunshine was aflood, and glad were maid and man, and through his throbbing veins the blood in keen sweet shudders ran. His steed tossed head with fiery scorn, and stamped and snuffed the air, as though he heard a sudden horn of far-off battle blare. Erect the rider sat awhile, with flashing eyes, and then turned slowly, sighing with a smile, O weary world of men! For I, the bird of fantasy, sang magic songs to him, and deeper still rode he into the forest dim. That rider with his face aglow, with joy of life I see. In dreams, years and years ago, he parted ways with me. Yet sometimes when the days are drear, and all the world forlorn, from out the dim wood's heart I hear the echo of his horn. This poem consists of ballad stanzas in alternating iambic tetrameter and trimeter.
Sound. The rhymes in this poem follow the structure of ballad quatrains in the rhyme scheme A-B-A-B. The iambic cadence is reminiscent of a horse galloping through a meadow.
This poem is filled with beautiful and descriptive sensory imagery. The main types of imagery that it uses are visual, auditory, and tactile. Visual imagery can be observed in many instances throughout this poem, such as the rider's eyes like jewels glowed, bright eyes through casements glanced at him, the world with sunshine was a flood, and that rider with his face aglow. Auditory imagery is present in For him the woodland sang, he laughed, a sudden horn of far-off battle blare, sighing, and the echo of his horn. Tactile imagery is used in The world was in his hand, through his throbbing veins, and stamped and snuffed the air.
The Bluebird of Fantasy. The Bluebird of Fantasy is a mysterious force that the horseman follows throughout the poem that sang magic songs to him. It most likely represents dreams, because when you are young, you follow your dreams, and the bird of fantasy always flies before him, suggesting that in his journey, he chases it. Eyes. Eyes are mentioned several times throughout the poem, such as in eyes like jewels, bright eyes, with flashing eyes. Eyes are always mentioned as a very bright and vivid, enforcing the surrealism and fantasy of the meadows. The horn. The horn is the primary source of auditory imagery in the poem, and it is mentioned as a specific memory at the last reminiscing line of the final stanza, providing the horn as a very important memory, possibly a true and unexaggerated event from the speaker's past.
The light. Light is commonly addressed in the poem, representing blissful youth while in the meadow. Whenever eyes are mentioned, they are always described as some form of bright, even after the horseman has entered the dark forest, representing the ever-present spark of youth in the horseman. The forest. The forest is always referenced to as dim, sharply contrasting the bright, fantastic meadow that the horseman rides through at the beginning of the poem. Because the horseman represents the journey of youth, the dark forest can be seen as the later stages of youth, or adolescence, when life is less happy and the truth begins to loom over the unending joy of young childhood. The meadow. The meadow at the beginning is surreal and a very joyful place, and is a very exaggerated embodiment of childhood happiness, with common fairy tale elements present such as fairies popping out of flowers, unrealistic happiness, and bright language creating an overstated fantasy land.
In the last stanza of the poem, the perspective shifts from a third-person view to a first-person view as the true narrator is revealed, an older man reminiscing about his childhood. The tone throughout the first 11 stanzas is very admiring and glorifying of the young horseman, then more reminiscent and wistful during the final stanza.
So, in this poem, there are similes used primarily for very detailed and vivid imagery, such as in the line, "eyes like jewels." Repetition is also used, but to cover the passage of time, such as in from the line, "from golden hour to golden hour." Hyperbole is also used, as in the line, "the world with sunshine was a flood," used to over-exaggerate the surreal amount of sunlight shining down on the scene.
The horseman described in the poem is the embodiment of the personality of a youth and its journey from young childhood, which is described by a fantastical meadow filled with fairy tale elements to emphasize the lucid joy of early childhood, to adolescence, represented by the dim forest. The speaker is an old man telling an exaggerated story to represent his mind as a child and his journey through youth.
I believe that this is a true representation of childhood because everything is always very happy and carefree during early childhood. And then during adolescence, you start to get more sad and world-weary.
It is impossible to fully agree with this wistful message because the author's point of view is one of age and retrospect. Since I am still in my youth, it is impossible to agree with this message, and as such, I can only regard it as worth listening to.
In the poem A Vision of Youth, Victor James Daly conveys the sense of a fleeting, innocent childhood through the use of the meadow imagery, and the sense that as you go darker into the forest, you lose innocence and experience the stark truth of adulthood.
Okay, we're building!
To a first-person view, as the true narrator is
Mind as a child and his journey through youth. Yeah.
Yeah!
Oh yeah.
More sad and world-weary. Oh my!
It is impossible.
Okay, why is it recorded?
You're talking about the conclusion.
Right, okay. So what am I saying?
Of his horn. Tactile imagery is used in "The world was in his hand, through his throbbing veins, and stamped and snuffed the air."